So far this unit we have been solving linear equations, and what that means is that our equations have always been degree 1. An example would be x plus 3 is equal to x minus, let's go 2x minus 5. Notice that the degree of the terms that have variables are 1, which means that the degree of the polynomial is equal to 1. In the next section that we're doing today, we're actually going to look at polynomials of degree greater than 1. So an example would be x squared plus 5x plus 6. This is a polynomial with degree equal to 2. Solving for polynomials with degree greater than 1 is a little bit different. And so we're going to start off with just looking at a very simple example of something that's already factored. So in example 1, I have x plus 2 multiplied by x minus 5 is equal to 0. Notice that it is actually a product of two numbers. X has an actual value. We can choose x to be 1, 2, 3, whatever you want. And we always follow BEDMAS, so we would always do the brackets first. If I let x equal 2, for example, you could have chosen 3 or 4 or 5. If I let it equal 2, then I'm going to substitute 2 in wherever I see an x. I get 4. And on this piece I get negative 3. Notice I'm following BEDMAS. And then I get negative 12. So in our question, we're not asking for negative 12. I want to know what values of x work such that I get the left-hand side to equal 0. Well, that means that either this whole piece must equal 0. Okay, so 0, because I'd be 0 multiplied by some number is equal to 0. Or the blue piece would have to equal 0. And I'd have some number for the yellow multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. So for that, I could say, okay, well, if x plus 2 equals 0, subtract 2 from both sides, then I get x is equal to negative 2. On the blue piece, if x minus 5 equaled 0, then x is equal to, if I add 5 to both sides, I get 5. What does that mean? Let's check it. Let's look at it. So my actual equation was x plus 2 multiplied by x minus 5 is equal to 0. So again, I'm trying to find the number for x that makes it so that the left-hand side is equal to 0. Now, we just found that x equals negative 2. Let's look at that. So if x equals negative 2, I get negative 2 plus 2 multiplied by negative 2 minus 5 is equal to 0. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. And in fact, 0 times negative 7 is 0, and 0 equals 0. So that would be correct. If x equals 5, again, I'm substituting for x, so I get 5 plus 2 multiplied by 5 minus 5 is equal to 0. 5 plus 2 is 7. 5 minus 5 is 0. And yes, in fact, 7 multiplied by 0 is 0, and 0 equals 0. So my solutions for this is x can equal negative 2 or positive 5. And that is my answer. Okay, so this is a little bit new. We're going to do 4 examples. My first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the right-hand side, I'm going to do RHS, equals 0. If it doesn't equal 0, then you have to find a way to make it equal 0, and we're going to do that kind of example in C. In this one, it equals 0. Awesome. My second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor. Now looking at A, it's not a trinomial, it's a binomial. Of course, it doesn't matter what it is, I always look for a common factor. And is there a common factor here? Yes, x. Okay, so now what I have is I have x multiplied by x plus 10. Notice that whenever I plug in a value for x, I would do BEDMAS first. So that means that I would be doing whatever's inside of these brackets first. What number could I put into my brackets to make it so that my brackets become 0? Well, my brackets right now are x plus 10. Okay, if I want this to equal 0, notice that I'm just going to subtract 10 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 10. I bet a bunch of you guessed that, but I just wanted to show you algebraically. All right, there's one more. With a binomial, there's going to be two answers. There might be the same answer twice, but we can maybe talk about that in class. For the next one, notice this. Well, what could x be so that something multiplied by something else equals 0? Well, this could equal 0. X itself can equal 0. So I have two solutions. I have x could equal 10, or x could equal 0. Let's check them. So my equation was x squared plus 10x equals 0. If x equals 0, I get 0 squared plus 10 multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. 0 squared is 0. 10 multiplied by 0 is 0 is equal to 0. 0 plus 0 is 0, and that equals 0. I'm just going to do it in blue here. If x equals negative 10, I get negative 10. Now remember, the whole number is squared, so that's why I've put negative 10 into brackets, because it's x squared and x is negative 10. So it's negative 10 multiplied by negative 10 plus 10 multiplied by negative 10, and this must equal 0. So I get positive 100 minus 100 is equal to 0. Well, a plus 100 minus 100 is 0. So in fact, 0 does equal 0. And we had the correct answer. Of course, some of you might be wondering, what was my answer? This is my answer. X equals negative 10, or x equals 0. All right, next one. I have x squared minus 16 equals 0. It's a binomial. This case actually doesn't have anything in common. Notice that it is equal to 0, which is our first thing. If I want to factor this binomial, notice that this is x multiplied by x. This is 4 multiplied by 4. And they're separated by a negative. I hope you're all saying this is a difference of squares, and therefore I can write this as x minus 4, x plus 4, and this is equal to 0. So my question is, what multiplied by what is equal to 0? So what value for x can I put in there so that one of these becomes 0? If this equals 0, then it's 0 multiplied by my blue piece, and anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So that means that x minus 4 must equal 0. Add 4 to both sides, I get x equals positive 4. That's one of my answers. The other case is if this equals 0. Well, x plus 4 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 4. Here's my other answer. Now let's check them. All right, so if x equals 4, and of course my equation is x squared minus 16, which should equal 0, then I have 4 squared minus 16 equals 0. 4 squared is 16. 16 minus 16 is equal to 0. Yep. What about if x equals negative 4? Now this is really important. X equals negative 4 and x is squared. So it's very important that we put these into brackets because it's negative 4 multiplied by negative 4. Well, negative 4 multiplied by negative 4 is positive 16. And 16 minus 16 is 0. Both of my solutions are correct. And my answers are x equals 4 or x equals negative 4. All right, we have two more. Okay, so my next example, I have my first step that I always want to do is get the right-hand side to equal 0. And right now, the right-hand side equals 32. So what could I do to both sides to get the right-hand side equal to 32? I hope you're saying add 32. Now on the left-hand side, there's no like terms. So when I write this out, it's going to look like this, and negative 32 plus 32 is equal to 0. Now I want to factor this. So if I do it by decomposition, it's going to multiply to positive 32 and add to negative 12. All right, well, some of you might see it right away, some of you might not. So if I split this up, I get 2 and 16, 2 and 8, 2 and 2, sorry, 4, and 2 and 2. I want it to add up to negative 12. And it has to multiply to positive 32. So both of my numbers are going to have to be negative. I can see 8 and 4, because negative 4 minus 8 is equal to negative 12. Negative 4 multiplied by negative 8 is equal to negative 32. Sorry, positive 32, which is what I wanted. If you factored it a different way, that's completely fine. Just make sure that you end up with the same answer. So I'm doing this by decomposition. You might factor it a faster way, or you might have a shortcut. All of them are fine as long as you get the same answer as me. Alright, so with this one, I'm going to break this down. I'm splitting the negative 12, so it's going to become negative 4x minus 8x plus 32 is equal to 0. I have my left-hand side. Now we're doing factoring by grouping. I'm taking out an x, and I get x minus 4 here. I'm going to take out a negative 8, and this is really important. I get positive x, and 32 divided by negative 8 will be negative 4 is equal to 0. Got the same. So I get x minus 4 multiplied by x minus 8 is equal to 0. Alright, we're factored now. Awesome. Now, I want to know what value for x makes it so that the left-hand side is equal to 0. Well, again, it's a product of two numbers. It's this number here multiplied by this number here. Notice that if this number equals 0, then we'd have 0 multiplied by something. Alright, well, let's find that out. X minus 4 is equal to 0. I hope you're all shouting right now that it's positive 4, but just with more algebra, I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and x equals positive 4. Alright, or this piece could equal 0. So I have x minus 8 is equal to 0, and I can do x is equal to 8. And this is my other answer. And again, if I check this, if I put it into my equation, I can check it again. Now, this one's a little bit different. If I go back to my original, maybe we'll just do this. X squared minus 12x is equal to negative 32. If x equals 4, I have 4 squared minus 12 times 4 is equal to negative 32. I have 16 minus 48 is equal to negative 32. Negative 32 is equal to negative 32. So my answer for x equals 4 was correct. Awesome. My other answer is if x equals 8, which means I get 8 squared minus 12 multiplied by 8 is equal to 32. This is 64 minus 96 is equal to 32. And if I do that, I get negative 32 is equal to, oh, I forgot my negative here. I'm sorry. I just forgot this, so I'm putting it back in. That came from there. And I get minus 32 is equal to minus 32. Yes, which means that this is also one of my answers. Okay, we have one more left. Alright, so first thing, does the right-hand side equal 0? And in fact it does. So my second thing is I'm going to factor it. Notice that in this case, when we ask the question that we always ask first, is there a common factor? Our answer should be an astounding yes. They all have 2 in common. If I take the 2 out, I get 3x squared minus 8x plus 4 is equal to 0. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to factor this now. I'm going to use decomposition again. So when I factor by decomposition, it needs to multiply to 12, and it needs to add to negative 8. I see right now 2 and 6 minus 2 minus 6 is equal to negative 8. minus 2 multiplied by negative 6 is equal to positive 12. I'm going to split this. So I have 3x squared minus 2x minus 6x plus 4 is equal to 0. Again, if you have a different method that works for you, that's fine. Do it on your own and just check to make sure that you've factored it the same way that I have. They have in common an x here, so I have 3x minus 2, and over here we have a minus 2 that we're going to take out, and that's important for our signs. We'll get 3x, and positive 4 divided by negative 2 is negative 2. And I forgot my big, maybe I'll make these into big brackets. So we're getting a little messy over there. There we go. Okay, I've got same. So I'm going to pull that out, and I get 3x minus 2 multiplied by x minus 2 is equal to 0. Alright, so I need my left-hand side. I need to choose an x such that my left-hand side equals 0. Now, it's a product of 3 numbers here. Okay, the 2 has no variables, so this is not going to be a contributing factor. Doesn't change anything, right? If I have 2 multiplied by 0 multiplied by something else, it's still going to be 0. So I kind of just ignore my 2. The next thing, though, that I look at is this one. Okay, so either this has to equal 0, or this has to equal 0. Alright, well, if the green piece, 3x minus 2, equals 0, let's solve for this. We're going to add 2 to both sides. And we get 3x is equal to 2. Solve for x. I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. And I get x equals 2/3. Alright, so this is one of my answers. And that came from my green piece. From my yellow piece, x minus 2 could equal 0. I'm just adding 2 to both sides, and I get x equals 2. That one was pretty simple. So my solutions to this are x equals 2 or 2/3. And we're done.